Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being here. We'll kind of jump right into it. For those of
Yeah.
you that are joining us, if you have any questions for Annette, you can put them in the session chat. And maybe you'll take them at the end, or as you go along, you can decide. But if you have any
I'll try and take them at the end, because
at
just
the
in
end.
case there's a bit of content here, that's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if you have any questions, stick them in the chat at any time, and then Annette can answer them as we go along. I want to give you just a brief introduction, and obviously, if you want to talk about your business a little bit more, that would be great. But Annette has coached hundreds of individuals, students, recent grads, mid-career, and senior level professionals seeking to transition into their next great role. She consults with organizations to attract top talent, improve overall team effectiveness, and build strong employer brands. At Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, Annette was lead career services for the working professional programs. She developed and delivered best-in-class career-related curriculum and worked one-on-one with MBA and master's business students to help them set career management goals, establish targets, and achieve success. So I'll let you tell the rest. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll be back at the end so I can help with questions or help.
Okay, that'd be great, because I probably have to flip out.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you,
Annette.
Rachel.
I'll leave you to it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me for this session. I'm really thrilled to be kicking it off. And interviewing is a huge topic. So I'm going to try and take bits and pieces of it today, and I'm just hoping that you can walk away from this session with 1 or 2 tips that you can now add to your, what I'll call, toolkit for job search. Because we don't have that much time, what I am hoping is that you'll put your questions in, and we'll take them at the end, and I'll try and group them. So Rachel, thank you for introducing me. I think the main thing that I want to share with you is, as a career coach, I've really focused on action and accountability, because it's only through action and accountability that you'll get results. So you've got to put the effort in. And I've been on all sides in terms of my background. I've been in career management. I've been at a university heading career services, and I've been on outplacement, a recruiter. And my background is in marketing. So I try and also bring a marketing perspective. But without action, learning what's working for you, I don't want you to just seem like one generic group and that you use the same strategy for every single opportunity. So what I want to cover with you today, so I want to give you a sense of what the interviewer's perspective is. Because any interview you walk into, you got to think about, what are they looking for? Do I have it? And make sure you communicate it. Then I'm going to talk to you about that common question. Tell me about yourself. And then I'll review briefly all the different types of questions that I'm sure that you are aware of and how you can prepare for it. Then, there's this whole group of questions that call behavioral questions. And I'm going to give you a framework of how you can start to build responses to those types of questions and do it with confidence, because you want to deliver it with confidence for someone to know that you have the skill set that will actually help you. And then finally, and Rachel's already touched on a lot of these things, the virtual interview, things that you're going to have to be aware of in terms of, the physical surroundings, in addition to everything else you have to do. Okay, so the interviewer's perspective. So think about what they might be. I've got a job. I've got to find the best person for it. What do I need to look for when I'm interviewing? And you've got to think of it in terms of, okay, what do I need to, if I can understand what the interviewer wants, that will help me prepare. So first and foremost, the interviewer is looking, can you do the job? Okay, they need to find people who can do the actual job. They won't leave in 6 months' time. So if you're applying for a role that you think, well, you're overqualified for, and then you don't get called in for an interview, don't think that you're being rejected. You're not the right fit for the role. And they think that if I did bring you in, you'd be leaving it, or you'd be frustrated. And the last thing that they're looking for is can get along with others, the fit, the likability. So this is all the things that they're looking to really check off while they're interviewing you. All right. So in terms of the types of interview questions, there's a whole plethora of them, and different processes and interview types of questions are being developed each and every day. But the first thing that I want to ask you to do is, if you've got an interview, someone calls saying, we'd love to bring you in for an interview, is please ask who's interviewing you, the format, the amount of time, because the more prepared you can be, the more successful you will be. And that's really what I want to get across, is if you know it's going to be behavioral based, or if there's a certain technical aspect that you'll be doing some review of data or writing a phrase, whatever it might be, they will share it with you. I also don't want you to be surprised. Can you imagine you're expected to come in and meeting one person one-on-one, right? And there's actually 4 people and you don't know who they are and they don't even have their cameras on. So the more information you can have, the better you will perform in your interview. It's different types of questions. There are the common interest questions, right? In this case, they're looking for rapport, fit, experience. They also want to get you comfortable and hopefully relaxed. A good interviewer does not want you to be uptight and nervous. The second type, which we're going to talk about a little further, is behavioral. And this is about competencies. This is where you think about what are the key skill sets, behaviors, things that I will be doing in my job. And I need to think of stories that will show an example of a time that I have behaved in a certain way. Then there's situational. What would you do if? How would you deal with this situation? If you had a teammate that wasn't keeping up his part of the workload, how do you deal with it? That sort of thing. Then there's case. And case is really all about problem solving. They want to know how you approach a problem, how do you think through it, and then how do you get to a solution or a recommendation. There's a lot of preparation that goes in, and it's weeks and weeks of preparing. Then there's technical. If you're going into finance, if you're looking at software development and programming skills, there might be technical aspects. And that's why I want you to be prepared for any technical questions that you might face. And then the last type of question is market. And market is really to get to know your opinions, your thoughts on a certain thing. Like if you're going into banking, what do you think will happen with the branch system in the future? Especially if it's a role where your opinions matter. They want to ask you about that. Okay, I'm going to keep on going. Now, in order to be prepared, there are many things you've got to do. You've got to analyze the job, research the company, figure out even what you're going to wear. Do you have your references? Do you understand what the salary expectations are? Like, do your research on all areas. So you need to research the industry. You need to research the company and the role. But then, to really kind of up your game, it's really about practicing. It's not winging it. It's practicing answering those common questions, those behavioral questions, and the technical questions. And sometimes it's over and over again because every time you answer it, you might be answering it a little differently. So be sure to do that. All right. This is the infamous tell me about yourself. And when I work with clients, I ask them at every session that I work with them is tell me about yourself because this is key. It has to really set up your compelling story and make it interesting. Like, why are you here? What brought you here? Why do you feel that you are a good fit for the company, perhaps, or for the role? And also, make it memorable. So it sounds like a lot to deliver, but the more you practice telling your story and then integrating it with the requirements of the role, you can set that interview off to like a great start. For some interviewers, this is the basis of the entire interview. So anything that you've said, they will ask you a follow-up question on that. All right. So be prepared with a tell me about yourself. Share it with those around you and make sure that they understand what the role is about and that you've touched on some of those skill sets that you have that make you such a great fit. Okay. We're going to then move on to other common questions. And I call these questions in front of you, these are 60 to 70% of any interview. And though the questions may not be asked exactly this way, they will certainly be asked of you. So tell me about yourself. Walk me through your resume. That's a different question than tell me about yourself. This is where the resume is in front of the interviewer and you have an opportunity to highlight what you want to in your resume. What do you want? Why do you want to work for company X? This is critical in so many ways. You need to know the difference of why you want to work for RBC versus CIBC. There are different cultures. Hopefully you've done your homework, you've networked with people and you understand the differences. Make sure you know why you want to work for that company and not any company in banking. Why do you want to work in, especially why do you want to work in this industry? This is going to be asked of you, especially in the cases where you're switching industries. You've come from automotive or manufacturing, and now you're moving into more of a professional services. So please have that answer as to why that change is happening and what has led you to this change. Okay, then you may be asked directly or indirectly about strengths and weaknesses. And if this is not a laundry list where you list off your strengths, but you tell me what your strengths are and you support it. I always say, don't just tell me, show me. If you've got a certain strength and you are a person who's able to, take complex information and really state it in a simple way, then tell me an example of a time you've done that. Now, everyone says, well, I hate the weakness question. I always try and have one that's something I've worked on and improved on. Now, all I can say to you is be authentic. Really think through what is a weakness of yours. You maybe have just become aware of it. Maybe it's always been a clear weakness. I don't like public speaking, and I'm still very nervous when I do, but I do my best to prepare. So that can be a weakness, right? Or dealing with certain types of spreadsheets it is, but I'm taking courses. So how are you overcoming it? If you're telling me about something you've already overcome, it's no longer a weakness. So this is something to see how aware are you of yourself, okay? Why should we hire you? Well, this is a culmination. If you don't, I would say have a 3-point plan. When you're going into an interview, you need to know the 3 key reasons of why you're the best fit for this particular role. And you've got to go over that messaging many times in your own mind with good examples so that, if at the end, even if you've had a terrible interview, I can tell you at the very end, you can still say, let me tell you why I think I'd be a great fit and summarize it. And this is the final question that I want you to be aware of because I know we're going to run out of time soon. So sorry, Rachel. What have you done or have you been doing during COVID? We've all had our own journey and we're all dealing with very different circumstances. So be able to share with someone what is kind of the most important thing that you want them to know that you've done during COVID. If it's been helping family or volunteering or maybe your health, really getting that happening. Okay. So behavioral questions. This gives an interviewer an example of what you've done in a specific situation in the past, right? It assumes your past behavior is the best indicator of future behavior. And that's really important. Something you've done in the past will probably, if you describe it, indicate what you would do in a similar situation in the future. And then there's the proof of your potential. So, as you're kind of thinking through, well, how do I do that? Okay. These are key competencies for many questions or many roles, team playing, analytical, dealing with conflict, etc. And there might be many others. So I want you to think about those and then develop a story, okay? And what I mean by a story is tell me, what did you do? So clearly state your role. When and where did it happen? How did you do it, right? What were some of the steps involved in you managing it? And what was the outcome? I'm going to give you an example, and then we can go back to this framework in the corner over here, okay? So here is an example of a question you may be asked. Tell me about a time you managed multiple deadlines and deliverables, okay? So the what did you do? In my role as a business analyst at ABC Technology Company last March, our team found itself needing to deliver a critical costing report to one client. Normally, we need 3 weeks. Everyone on the team already had a number of presentations and reports to write. I had 4. So that's the what, okay? Then you get into the how. The first thing I did was create a work plan. This included an initial meeting, etc. I then emailed my manager at the end of the day, each day with a short progress update, okay? And then I wanted to go to the outcome. So based on her feedback, I made a few tweaks, and we sent the report to the client the next morning. The client was impressed with the analysis, etc. So by telling me what you did, how did you do it, meetings, presentations, etc., maybe even what you did, said, thought, felt, and briefly wrap it up. Okay. Now we're getting to the virtual interviews. So in 2019, there was a study done, and it asked employers what percentage of your interviews and any part of it that you use online, or some form of virtual. And 65% said they're using some form already. And they indicated in the following year that 85% plan to. And that might have been at a screening stage, and there were lots of benefits to it. So now 2020 hits, and what happens? 100% are virtual. They're here to stay. And there's a lot of efficiencies that go along with that, and it allows for you to be able to meet multiple people, they get to know you, they can screen more people. But I think what is really important about virtual is that the tips, and Rachel mentioned some of these, is that you've got to do all the things you're going to do for a regular face-to-face interview, but you probably have to do more now. So you're going to research the industry and the company. You're going to prepare and practice your answers. You're going to wear appropriate clothing, right? You're going to find out what is appropriate. And then you got to check your camera angle and lighting. And then this is what's really important, that final impression. You said first impressions make a difference, final impressions make a difference. End on a positive note. And always follow up with a thank you note, almost immediately. I guess with the virtual, things are happening more momentarily, and you've got to do that. So at the end of all this, hopefully you're going to have a very successful, almost that you feel like you can reach across the screen and thank them. And then, you know what, that'll be the end of it. And hopefully through this, you'll be able to ace. I know I'm almost out of time, so I do want to say namaste to all of you, but, to remind you that you can focus on actions, then accountabilities when you're going through a job search, and what you need to do each and every week to get there, then the results will come. So thank you. I'm going to now stop sharing this. Oh no, hold on. Oh no, there we go. And I see that there are a few questions that may have come in. Will this session be recorded and available after? Hello to all of you. Still no sound. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody actually got to hear what I was talking about. Rachel, are you still here? Hey.
Hi, Annette. It was just one person that was experiencing
difficulty. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So if anyone has any questions, for Annette, you can put them in the chat, just on the right-hand side. Sometimes people get a little shy about asking questions, but if you have any questions, so what do you think from a recruiter's perspective? If you could say the most important thing that people should practice tomorrow for their interview, what would that be?
It really is the tell me about yourself. It's your story.
For sure.
Because the story lays out, first of all, what brings you to this point, and you have an opportunity to share what those strengths that align your background, your interest with the role that you're being considered for. So really work on that, because I think over and over again, it will change and adapt, but it will leave that first impression.
Absolutely. And I know the weakness question is really hard for some people, but it's just a matter of really practicing, right? And I always tell people too, do a mock interview with a friend or do it with yourself and then watch it back. It's hard to do, but
yeah. But I've got to tell you though, we all have now ways of recording ourselves. So what those there are different platforms that are out there that will actually serve up questions to you. But I think more importantly, just record yourself and take note. Like I use my hands, like I'm always saying here, but take note of those things. Are you looking in the camera? See, what I found difficult even today is that I had a couple of different points. So I was trying to focus on the camera, but I didn't see myself. So I wasn't somehow my screen wasn't set up in the best way. And you're going to find that as well. You might find yourself, oh no, I'm not really seeing the person interviewing. I'm only hearing them. All sorts of things happen with different platforms. So try and be prepared for it and okay with whatever may happen.
Absolutely. Such a good point. Yeah. But watching myself was very difficult on the camera, but you learn a lot. It's the best way to get better. And then I also learned, someone told me to put like a sticky note where my camera is so that I always look up instead. It reminds me to constantly look up. So that's been very helpful because I always want to look at the screen or look at myself. So that's been
you're over here, Rachel, you're in my bottom corner here and I need to look over there. Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I have a little pink sticky note up there to remind myself to look up through these things. So yeah, well, thank you so much, Annette, for joining us. We really appreciate all of your content. I know it takes a lot of time to, prepare these presentations, and we really appreciate it. Maybe you want to put your contact information in the chat here, just in case anyone, wasn't comfortable asking questions, or maybe they want to reach out to you about your services. yeah, it's just easier because then they can click on it directly.
Not a problem. If there are any questions, as I'm typing here, I don't really do anything.
Oh, we have a couple questions now
Okay.
rolling in. So what is
All right.
the rule? What is the rule of thumb for the duration for the tell me about yourself question?
That's actually great because I was going to talk about that. You know what? If you're speaking for more than 2 minutes and, the other person is just, nodding his or her head, you've gone too long. The 2 minutes is okay. As you start to practice, you'll find that you get to the 2-minute point very quickly. You can't go beyond that 2 minute. So if you can try to have it tell me about yourself, that's closer to 1 minute. You might go over, you'll be fine. Otherwise, you're getting too much in the weeds and you're not really doing the interesting, memorable, and compelling story. You're telling me about the specific things that you do. And you know what? I may not be listening anymore.
Good point. No, for sure.
Yeah.
The interviewer, I guess, generally has control of the interview. So you kind of don't want to take away from their time, and they probably have, scheduled questions and stuff like that. So 2 minutes, I would think, is probably perfect timing.
Yeah.
And we probably have time. We have someone that said very good tips. Thank you. And we have David who's asking, I usually try to answer the tell me about yourself question that I'm an analytical, creative problem solver. Is this too dry or vague?
And you know what? I think it just can apply to too many. That I think you can say I'm a creative problem solver, but definitely support it with some evidence. While I was in my last role, I did this. That can demonstrate. As I said earlier, don't just tell me something, but show with an example. And by showing, I mean tell a story. And you might not be able to tell your whole story and then tell me about yourself, but just support it. Provide some evidence. Otherwise, it seems like it can apply to too many people.
Right. I always say that too with your resume. It's, everybody can have customer service skills, but, prove it. Show us quantitative information about, how you were successful if you worked in a call center, they give you a lot of stats, right? So use those stats to your advantage. But thanks so much for the questions at the very end there. That was great. Annette's put her contact information here. And we just, again, want to say thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. I know 20 minutes goes by really quickly.
I know. This is a huge topic, and I did want to touch on all elements of it, but
we'll have to have you back.
I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. And we have our next session starts in a couple minutes. So it is Portia, who is a social media strategist, and she's going to be talking about level up your LinkedIn. So really important. LinkedIn right now is a huge value to anyone looking for a job, just because we can't do these in-person meetings and live events and things like that. So it's kind of your next best way to meet people online. So in a business, obviously, atmosphere. So Portia's going to walk us through LinkedIn. But thank you so much again, Annette. We really appreciate it. And I'll see everyone in the next session.
Thanks.